Hi everybody, this is Debbie at B.R.A.T Women's Riding Academy, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about fear. I think that there's a very big misconception with new riders who think that, that as they get more and more comfortable with their motorcycle, that fear will leave them. I will say you're not wrong. Your fear level will decrease, and so you will become less fearful, especially as you become more and more comfortable with that motorcycle. And you also will become less and less fearful riding the more work that you do, the more practice you put in, not just riding on the road, which of course is very important, but also very important is to continue your slow maneuver skills. Because one of the reasons what we fear so much is, the biggest fear that I hear among women is, I don't want to drop my bike. Well, the reason we drop our bike, usually it's not, we're not doing 60 miles an hour and oops, we drop our bike. But the times where we're most prone to drop our bikes is going to be when we're riding slow, whether it's in a parking lot or we're trying to make a turn somewhere. And so it's usually at slower speeds. So the best way to alleviate our fear on our motorcycles is to do the thing that scares us the most. So that might sound counterintuitive, but hopefully not. Hopefully that makes sense, because if we do what scares us, then we no longer become scared of it anymore. So, as some of you may know, I just purchased back in November this beautiful Indian Chieftain. It's an Indian Chieftain. It is a 1800 cc. It's 111 cubic inches. So that equals about 1800 cc's. Although I've been riding for coming up on 16 years, I have always ridden bikes that are like 800s. Why? I don't know. I'm just really, really comfortable on the Suzuki Volusia and the Suzuki Boulevard. And so those are the bikes that I have stayed with. When I ride those bikes, I feel like I can do anything on them. My slow maneuvering on them was really comfortable, and the bike just got feeling like an extension of myself. But I kind of got thinking, if you always have done what you always did, you'll always get what you've always got, if that makes any sense. So if I'm always riding the bikes that feel comfortable for me, how am I growing as a rider? How am I growing as a person? How am I growing, continuing to push outside of my own comfort zone? In the meantime, because I haven't wanted to ride something bigger, because I was comfortable and I kept saying, well, why? What's the point? Why do I need something bigger? I don't have anything to prove to anybody. And that's true. I certainly don't have anything to prove to anybody. None of us do. We ride motorcycles purely for our own pleasure, and we should do exactly what we like to do and what makes us happy, and not feel pressured by, hey, everybody else is riding bigger bikes or whatever. But as a motorcycle coach, and somebody who believes in lifelong learning, not just in motorcycling, but in every aspect of my life, I decided, you know what? I really, really wanted an Indian Chieftain for a really long time now. And I kept telling myself, oh, that's silly, that's ridiculous. And then I kind of thought, why is that silly? Why is that ridiculous? And when I really, really stopped and challenged myself on it, the reason that I wasn't getting it was because if I have a motorcycle, I need to know how to slow maneuver on it. I'm not going to have a motorcycle that I can't turn around in the middle of the road if I happen to miss a turn. I'm not going to have a motorcycle I can't make a U-turn on. And I have been fearful that if I got a bike this big, I wasn't going to be able to slow maneuver it. So I decided to just jump on that fear and squash it. And so I bought the bike that I always wanted to have. And yes, it's a big bike. Now, here's what I want to talk about with fear. People think that once you've been riding a long time, like they'll say to me, oh, Debbie, you're riding almost 16 years. You've done a cross-country trip. You do lots of long-distance travel. You do tons of slow maneuver training for you, and then you give slow maneuver training for others. I'm sure you have no fear. Now, when it came to riding my old Suzuki Boulevard, my little 800, that was mostly true, although I'm still human. So, of course, there were things that I would fear. I think back in 2021, when I was doing my cross-country trip and I was supposed to be riding my motorcycle up to Michigan by myself, which was about 900 and change in miles, to meet my two friends to start our cross-country trip, I really deliberated about trailing the motorcycle up there. And it was because I was afraid to ride all that distance by myself. And I had to have a little come to Jesus talk with myself and say, what exactly are you afraid of? And so what I began to do was to write down all the reasons that I was afraid. Like, oh, this could happen, or that could happen, or, whatever it was I was afraid of. And so when I started to combat those fears head on, I was able to come back and say, well, if this happens, I can just do this. Or if that happens, I'll be prepared with that. Because the truth of the matter is we can never control the circumstances outside of ourselves. We can't always control what happens to us, but we do have control over what our response to those circumstances are. So I went ahead and I made a list of those fears, and I got over them, and I rode my motorcycle 40 something, 50 something miles to Michigan to meet my friends. And at the end of our long distance trip, I rode that motorcycle back the same 900 miles I rode it there. And it was fine. I had no problems. And so I got over that fear. And since then I've pushed myself to ride longer and longer distances and longer distances by myself, because I actually found out that not only am I not afraid of it, I actually really love it. So anyway, back to being fearful. So yes, so those of us who are long-term motorcyclists, we do still have fear, and we still can have fear. And I always like to be transparent when I am working with or talking to students. I don't ever pretend to be this, awesome motorcyclist. Like, I'm not Evel Knievel where I have no fears and I have no limitations. I am human, and I have fears and I have limitations. The difference between me and maybe newer riders or some other people is, though, I'm never going to let those fears hold me back and stop me from doing what I want to do. Now, for a little while, those fears did stop me from buying this motorcycle, but I finally pulled the trigger and I did it. So now I've gotten really comfortable on the bike. I have it. It's not quite 2 months. It's about 6 weeks, I guess, that I've had this bike. It's been winter. December in North Carolina was not kind to us, so I didn't have a lot of days to get out. January is really been a gift. It's 62 degrees right now at like 12:30 in the afternoon. So I'm thankful for January. Thank you. And I've been able to put about 600 miles on this motorcycle in these past 6 weeks, which is not really a lot of mileage, but it's what I've been able to do with the weather we've had. And just with the holiday. And I was sick in there, which I'm still kind of holding on to. You can hear it in my throat. But I've gotten out to ride this motorcycle. But the one thing I have not done yet is I have not really done any slow maneuvering on it. And that is because I wanted to just get really comfortable with the feel of this bike. Because this motorcycle is almost 900 pounds and has a fairing on it, which my Suzuki did not. And it's got the hard saddlebags, all that good stuff, where my Suzuki was, 600 and change. So this bike is not quite, but almost 300 pounds heavier than my Suzuki. So it's a lot of bike to manage. Plus, it's an 1800 as opposed to an 800. So I've got a very, very powerful clutch, a very, very powerful friction zone, let's say, because I let that clutch out just a little tiny bit and that bike starts to go. So I've had to get used to that clutch a little bit and learn my clutch and learn the combination of the clutch and the throttle. So that's what I wanted to talk today about, was just about fear and about just, getting acclimated to something. Whenever we do something new, it's always going to feel weird or different. But if we allow that feeling to overtake us and overcome us, we're never going to get past us. We're never going to get past it. We have to be willing to be uncomfortable in order to learn something new. In addition, which I've recently talked about a lot, is we have to be willing to suck at something. But we definitely have to be willing to be uncomfortable to learn something new and get good at it. So right now I'm a little bit uncomfortable on this bike. So I'm going to just turn this around. I'm going to show you what I'm going to be doing. I don't have anybody here with me, so unfortunately I won't be able to record the maneuvers, but more than anything, I just wanted to talk about fear and how myself, as an experienced motorcycle, is having some fear around doing slow maneuvering on this motorcycle, but I'm going to combat that. So here is my Indian Chieftain. I feel really good on this bike now that I've done the 600 miles. I was very fearful on this bike. I took this bike a couple of days ago to the B.R.A.T forest, the B.R.A.T National Forest in North Carolina here, which was about an hour and a half from my house or so. And there's some curvy roads in there, not like going into the North Carolina mountains, but there's some decently curvy roads. And learning the lean angle of this bike has been something else that I've feared. And I've been pushing, my comfort zone on local roads here. And then I took it to the U.R.A. forest where I pushed my comfort zone even more and did some pretty curvy roads out there. And I felt really good on them. I was scared. I kept saying to myself, oh, why are you being such a wuss with this motorcycle? You're a wuss. So, I was, kidding myself a little bit and giving myself a little bit of rough TLC, I guess you can call it. But, I was going to push myself and motivate myself to get out there and do it. And the funny thing was, is when I got back towards more local roads and I was on some, roads with some sweeping curves, not very tight curves, though, that I had been a little bit intimidated on when I first started riding this motorcycle, all of a sudden those curves seemed really easy to me. And this motorcycle just seemed to ride itself very smoothly and very easily through those curves. So challenging myself to do something a little harder made the previous hard task seem a lot easier. So here's what I'm going to do today. I just rode the motorcycle around this parking lot. And with my Suzuki, I could easily zigzag in. I could go from this spot into the next spot, into the next. Well, I can't do that with my Indian right now. I came through this spot and I'm pushing the bike. And I think it was not until like that fourth spot that I was able to really feel like I could turn the bike in. So I've got some work to do. So I'm really just going to start with this easy cone weave. I just, like I said, rode the bike around a little bit. As I was weaving in and out, I was able to get it down from going in from from that first spot into the fourth spot and a little closer to this third spot. So just in 10 minutes of riding the bike and remembering to look where I want to go, moving my whole head in the direction that I want to go to, remembering to use a good balance of my clutch and a little bit of throttle and my rear brake, remembering all those principles, I was really able to make some improvements. So now I'm just going to do this cone weave. I've never done a cone weave on this bike before. So it'll be interesting. These cones right now are about 15 feet apart because I'm giving myself a little bit of just easy to ease myself in, and I'll do it a couple times and then I'll bring them down to 12 feet. And eventually my goal is to be able to do this at 10 feet like I can on my Suzuki. So that's what I'm going to do today. But the whole point is, again, you have to combat fear. Fear is not just going to go away by itself. You can't just wish it away. You can't pray it away. Fear has to be combated by facing it. We have to face the thing that we're afraid of. And, if we can't get to that point, we need to sit down and ask ourselves, what are we afraid of and why? Why are we afraid of it? Is it a legitimate concern? Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's a self-limiting belief that we make up in our head. It's a story that we've decided to believe about ourselves, our abilities, the situation. So it's really, really important to analyze what that fear is and figure out, some fears are healthy. Like if I saw a lion over there, which, thank goodness we don't live in a place where there's lions. But if I saw a lion over there, I should run away from it. That's a healthy fear because that thing would probably want to eat me. Although I wouldn't run from it, I would get on my bike and ride away from it because if I tried to run from him, he would catch me. So, there are some fears that are healthy, and we need to kind of look at those and make the determination between healthy fears and, fears that are just made up, that are not really Anyway, I hope that was helpful for you. And again, I'll continue to share my progress, how I do with, riding. My goal is to ride this course for the 44-hour motorcycle course in April. But I do want to try to pass it. So I do still have my Suzuki Boulevard at home. And if I do need to take the course on that bike, I won't feel ashamed because at least I tried. But my goal is to get this bike out there and take that 44-hour motorcycle officer certification class and pass on this motorcycle. So to be continued. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening. I'll talk to you soon.